In this video, Nez Nation, we're going to talk about how to overcome your fears in 2 amazing steps and approaches with an actual real case study, and we're going to get into that right this second. Most of us are held back by the things that we want to do, the things that we want to achieve because of this dude right here. I've said this time and time again on this channel. If you're new here, one of the things that I like to say all the time that's actually come from experiential learning, from my own self-practice and self-investigation, I truly believe with every single fiber of my being that the only thing stopping you from achieving anything in life is this dude right here, the guy inside your head. It's that little dude whose favorite word is can't. I'm going to talk about 2 approaches that you can implement to combat this foe. Okay, I've called him the eternal doubter. A lot of people call him the inner naysayer, inner demon. They have all sorts of kind of names for it. The self-doubter, the self-defeating thoughts, all of those things. And we're going to talk about 2 approaches on how you can dominate this dude and give this dude the pink slip, which is exactly what you need to do. The first approach that I'd like to discuss is something that I call the Apprenticeship Approach. This is a delicate thing because a lot of people, just being a human being, and this comes from studying this dude for over 27 years, I come from a background where evidence, research, everything on this channel, I really try to thoroughly give it that authentication and validation and verify everything as I implore you to do so. Don't believe this dude right here. Don't believe anything I'm saying. Test my stuff in the real world. Test my stuff out there in your real life, because if it's not applicable, then you discard it, you throw away, you unsubscribe, hasta la pasta. I wouldn't blame you. You have to verify all of these things. So the first step is called the Apprenticeship Approach. And what this entails is you've got to adopt the mindset that I need to seek out extra help, extra guidance, extra assistance. This is a delicate thing because most people have these giant EGOs called egos, and they don't like to admit that there's something wrong with them, especially with the stigma and the scrutiny that surrounds the idea of having mental blocks, the idea of having fear, the idea of having anxiety, depression. A lot of mental health patients can vouch for this. I've worked with millions of them, that when they feel these internal rumblings, when they feel that fear and anxiety have completely swamped them and swallowed them whole, it's very difficult to discuss this, not only with outsiders and strangers, but even their own family, because there is such a stigma. A lot of people equate mental imbalance with weakness, which is so atrocious, and it just drives me crazy. This is a real thing. We're living in an era where human beings have never operated in this fashion. We've never been this hyperbolically connected. We've never lived in a world that's this capital F-A-S-T, fast. So there's going to be a lot. I mean, I think we're living in the second anxiety age. I mean, we already had an anxiety age. This is like anxiety age 2.0. More and more people are experiencing panic attacks, anxiety, the power of this dude. And this dude right here is loving it. He's just loving all of this juicy fodder for him. And that, I call him the eternal doubter again. So the apprenticeship approach involves you have to admit to yourself, accept that this is something that's stifling you. It's not something that's just going to go away by you wishing it away. It's not something that sometimes, I do believe you can work it out on your own, and that's the second approach, but sometimes it's difficult, so it helps, and it definitely helped me. When I was going through my debilitating anxiety and depression, it was the loneliest time of my life. I felt so isolated, so alienated. I stayed in my room sometimes, and I'm a fun, energetic, life-loving dude. Sometimes I stayed in my room as long as 2-3 weeks straight without talking to anybody, seeing anybody. It was atrocious. I didn't feel there was anywhere to turn. I was too afraid. I was afraid of being afraid. I was fearing fear. I was anxietal over anxiety. It was insanity. And I didn't feel like talking about it with anybody. I felt like Discussing this confirmed that I was weak, confirmed that I was less of a human being, that I was deficient in some way. I didn't recognize that this is something that a lot of people have gone through. I felt the loneliness stemmed from this false precept that this is something that is exclusive to me. It's not. You're not the only one going through this. Millions and billions of people have gone through this. Millions and billions of people are going through this right now. So the apprenticeship approach involves, first of all, accepting this is something that's happening to you. This is something that's stifling you. This is something that's an obstacle to who you want to be. And that's the first step. Once you admit and accept that, the second step is I want to reach out to people, reach out to not just experts, doctors, psychologists, but perhaps mentors, researching, going online, finding out people who've experienced what I've experienced, who've gone through. We're living in an amazing era right now where all you need to do is literally just Google things, but do a little bit more investigation too, and you'll discover people who've gone through these exact same life trials as you have, and they have amazing responses, amazing answers on how to help you and how to get you further along the path, because they're further along in their progress. Even if it's somebody who's just a little bit more further down the road on this journey, they can be a huge, tremendous help. So reaching out to people, how did you overcome this? What did you do to overcome this? I have a playlist I'll leave in the card right now called Mindset Mastery, where I have a ton of videos on how to combat this dude and transcend this dude and be the best self that you can be. So check those out. But I implore you to check other sources. I implore you to go and research. When I was going through this was before the internet. Really, it was not before the internet, but before the real internet, where it really got cooking. And I spent days, I mean like 12, 13 hours in Barnes & Noble in the library, reading carnivorously everything I could get my hands on about this dude. And it was absolutely refreshing. And it was more than that. It was research, it was academic, it was popular scholarly sources, it was people that I found online, doctors that I found online, humanists, anybody who'd gone through what I'd gone through, pretty much from the years 1998 to 2008. I've pretty much talked to anybody who's ever had anything to do with this guy. So that's that, and it was a huge, tremendous relief, because the first thing that I discovered is that I was not alone. And that's a beautiful thing when you're going through these monstrous, horrific fears and anxieties that can just pummel you. And it's almost like a giant thumb pressing you into the earth. It's really hard to come up with a simile or metaphor that can describe it effectively. I think it was Sigmund Freud who once said that having an anxiety attack, having a panic attack, is one of the most debilitating states that a human being can ever experience. I may be wrong about the actual accreditation of that quote, but I know it was somebody important. Maybe it was Carl Jung. So anyway, that's the first step. The first step is the apprenticeship approach. Now, the second approach to combating how to overcome your fears, how to overcome fears that are stopping you, okay, in 2 steps. The second approach is something I like to call self-investigation, self-inquiry. This goes back to the dawn of the century. Actually, this goes back 6,000 years to such great sages as Lao Tzu, who was 3,000 years before, 4,000 years before Jesus. Great sages, great minds, great priests, great wisdom seekers, philosophers, unbelievably self-aware individuals who have discovered what the real truth is behind these fears, which it's all an illusion. Most fears, please heed this, Nez Nation, 90% of your thoughts are absolute garbage. They don't mean a thing. They just pop and bubble out of nowhere. I love this approach. I still have great respect for the first approach, the apprenticeship approach on how to overcome your fears. But this approach, this second approach, self-investigation, self-inquiry, involves a couple of things that I want to get into it. And it goes all the way back to really the dawn of mankind. A lot of great sages, a lot of great individuals, empowered, self-aware individuals have discussed this. Ask yourself, go somewhere quiet, go in an environment that promotes comfortability, relaxation, a peaceful environment. I like to go. One of my favorite things to do is to take books like the Tao Te Ching, take books like Leaves of Grass or Woody Guthrie's autobiography, William Saroyan, and just go by myself. Rumi, Hafez, poetry, Rudyard Kipling, and just go by myself to a very nice secluded place. My favorite spot is this beach. I'm not telling anybody where that spot is because it's my spot. And ruminate, brood, introspect, analyze, reflect, just be, investigate. 3 questions you can ask yourself when you have these fears. Number one, where do these fears come from? Just let that marinate. Where do they come from? Why are they there? Number 2, maybe they're legitimate fears. Really kind of reflect on that. Why are they there? I think, in my experience, actual case study, how to overcome your fears, I've found them to mostly be illusions and mostly be garbage, as I said before. Why are they here? What do they actually mean? Number 3, who would I be without this thought? Can I live without this thought? How would my life unfold if I didn't believe in this thought? I have great videos on how you can really observe your thoughts with a detachment without placing so much meaning on them, because it's the meaning that fuels and energizes these thoughts. But I can only talk about it to you. I don't want this to be just intellectual. If it's not experiential, it means goose egg. It means absolutely nada. It don't mean jack. Test this out for yourself. Go somewhere peaceful. Go somewhere quiet. Go somewhere where comfort is in abundance. Breathe very, very deeply. Typically, these places are outdoors, but if you have a sanctuary indoors, by all means. If you have a place that you feel ultimately comfortable and relaxed, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to sit in lotus position. You don't have to meditate. You don't have to say Om, and you don't have to do any of these things. You can sit, you can stand. All that stuff is bupkis. You don't need to worry about all those little kind of idiosyncrasies. You just be. You just reflect. And have the courage to face those fears. Have the courage to look fear dead in the eye and say, now what, pal? Why are they there? I'm sorry, where do they come from? Why are they there? Who would I be without this thought? This one's the biggie. This one's the biggie. Where would I be if I didn't believe this thought? How would my life unfold if I didn't put so much energy, so much attention to this thought? I want to leave you with this, Nez Nation. Please heed this. Don't ever forget this. Thoughts come and go. Thoughts come and go. You have 50,000 thoughts a day. I know I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again because it bears emphasis. Thoughts are just thoughts. You have thousands and thousands of thoughts per day. They don't mean anything unless you attach meaning to them. In this busy, fast, super hyper hustle life that we live today, it's very difficult to find time to just kind of reflect and introspect and self-investigate and become what Aristotle said, truly self-aware. I implore you, if you're experiencing these fears, if you're experiencing any fear, this applies to anything, take the time, unplug, go somewhere safe, go somewhere comfortable. Why are these thoughts here? Where do they come from? I keep getting that wrong. Where do they come from? Why are they here? Who would I be without this thought? Really let that stuff seep in. Let that stuff marinate in here. And I promise you good things will happen. I promise you. There'll be a little bit of levity, a little lightness to the whole situation. And you may come to some profound realization that you don't need these thoughts. These thoughts cannot live, they cannot breathe, they cannot sustain without you being there first. Who are you? Who are you? Who is watching these thoughts come and go? Because these thoughts, one thing you cannot deny is that no thought stays permanently. Thoughts and problems are impermanent, but there's something here that's permanent. You need to discover this. I can only talk about it. You need to experience this. I hope you got supreme value from this video. I want to pose something to you, Nez Nation. Leave in the comments below, what are some ways in which you overcome your fears? How do you overcome your fears? Have you used any of these steps that I talk about? The apprenticeship approach or the self-investigation approach? What are your thoughts? What were the outcomes? What were the results? I would love to hear from you. Also, please don't forget our new podcast. I'm going to leave the link below. Nez Nation Live. It's not new. It's just the relaunch. We talk about everything. Mindset, heart set, digital media, communications, business. It's the hub. It's the headquarters. It's the only place you need to go to get everything you need in this 21st century world so you can thrive. We have some great interviews with unbelievable guests. We also have reports, news briefings, up to the latest and greatest of what's happening in the world. And I would love for you to join us, subscribe, and check it out. Nez Nation Live, the podcast. Thank you so much for watching. I love y'all. It means the world to me that you give me your time. Again, I hope to God that you got some value at it. And please like and share. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything. Hit that bell notification so you always get notified. It's Professor Nez, y'all. You know I'm going to bring it every single week. Bringing it for you. I love you. Have a wonderful day. Take care.